had to share this. I've got a lot of parents that are asking me about things about COVID with their kids and concerned about the things that they've been seeing, and especially what they saw like 2 weeks ago. And it's still just kind of manifesting in the back of their mind about like, well, I'm concerned, like what's going on and what's happening and what's the latest information, because they're concerned about COVID for their kids. I want to point out like what some of the headlines are and then talk about what actually underneath it is really talking about. So you can see right here, this is one. It talks about how these kids have developed this rare, mysterious COVID-19 linked illness. And when you look at that, you instantly read that headline, and a lot of us look, there's so much information we're being bombarded with right now that it's really frustrating to me to see how it is that these things are being positioned. It's so positioned as fear-based, and it's positioned as a place of going like, all right, look, your kids could get coronavirus and that could be it. Like it's all over, right? Whereas when we started all this, we saw that they were saying, hey, look, fortunately, it doesn't look like that's the consideration for kids. Now they're looking at it and putting fear in all of us for that kind of thing. But I want to go deeper into it. Like, let's actually look at what even just this article alone says. Like, it talks about the fact, it says, doctors say, and I'm going to reference some other things too, and I'm going to talk about some other research that's out there that's going to help. I'm hoping that it's going to settle your mind, because right now, parents are they're fearful of these things. They're fearful about what it means, and there's no more talk about it. It's like it was talked about and we were all got freaked out and scared and everything like that, but there's nobody else coming on the back end and saying, hey, this is what we really know about this, and this is what we can really look at and really grab onto. Instead, it's, I've heard about this and I'm scared, right? And so let me talk about what the article actually says here. It says, look, doctors say that there's an increase in the numbers that they're seeing and what's going on. And so they're saying this, not necessarily that the number suggests that the cases have grown, but that instead they say it's likely that there's a result of increased awareness of the problem. Okay? It's not like there's something different going on. It's just we've got increased awareness. And what it's called pediatric multisystem inflammatory syndrome. Pediatric multisystem inflammatory system. So basically it's saying, look, we've got a lot of different organs that are all getting inflamed and all over. And so this is something that's not new. All right, I want to stress that from what they're saying here, they're talking about this. They're saying this isn't new. This is just more awareness of what's going on. There's a specific subset of people based on this research study that they talked about. And I'm going to talk about that and about who's more highly at risk and why that is. It makes sense. And once you hear it, you hear like, oh, this is why that makes sense. And what I can do for my kids with this and how I can make sure that I'm addressing these things. It's going to make sense once you hear it, but let me explain. It talks about further in the article, it talks about, look, that we've got all these cases that are going on, all these, meaning that 85 kids across the U.S., across the entire U.S., I've seen numbers now where it's talking about as high as just over 100 across the U.S., which is talking about that. And it says that the pediatric multisystem inflammatory syndrome can mirror symptoms of other inflammatory illnesses such as the Kawasaki disease and toxic shock-like syndrome. Now, what does that mean? Well, this Kawasaki, that's been around for decades. That's nothing new. That's something that they've seen before, that they know how to take care of it. They know how to address it. They know how to get the inflammation down. And they know how to help kids with this. The other thing is they said, we want to do this. This is what they said in the article where it talks about, like, this is so fear-based, like such a fear-based headline where it makes you instantly go, oh man, what's going on? But when you read into it, you see, like they say, we want to reassure parents this appears to be uncommon. It appears to be uncommon. While Kawasaki disease can damage the heart or blood vessel, can damage it, it says the heart problems usually go away in 5 or 6 weeks and most children fully recover. All right. Now we're going to talk about next some of the groups, a subset of groups that are having more problems. It says, this is from Dr. Jane Newbar, director of the Kawasaki program at Boston Children's Hospital. And she was writing that based on the fact of she was writing for the American Heart Association for that too. It says, in general, families don't need to worry about this. I doubt that this is really new. I think it's just really newly recognized. That's important to know, right? Like that's important for us to know, like, whew, okay, we can take a breath. Now, here's the other thing. This other title here where it talks about children gravely ill with COVID-19 often had other medical conditions. They often had other medical conditions. So This was a study that they did where they looked at, or a cohort where they looked at a vast majority of these patients across all these different hospitals and tried to see like, all right, what's going on here and why is it that we're seeing this? So they said that vast majority of the patients, 40 children, including 2 that died, which is heartbreaking. I mean, look, if you're a family that's dealing with this, it's hard. I don't mean to not make it to where this isn't serious. I don't mean it like that at all. It is serious. And if our kids are dealing with these things, we should definitely make sure that they get looked at and they get seen to make sure that we're protecting them. That's number one, right? Like that's number one, protect them. But I also want to make sure that I'm letting parents know, as a parent myself of 3 kids, like I want to make sure that I know and that my families know and that my patients know that the chances of this are so small, that our chances of having these types of issues are so small that for us to get up in arms and really concerned, because I've got patients that are really concerned and almost at a point of panic for these things for their kids because of the headlines that they're reading and what they're seeing on the news, and they're seeing these things that just get us in such a stressed state, and stress is already high, that now you're saying now it can affect my kids? That's unacceptable, right? Like we can't have that. We've got to protect them at all costs and make sure that they're taken care of. But this when we start to dive into it, we start to look at it and go, all right, look, what's really going on here? It says the vast majority of the patients, 40 children, including 2 that died, it said had pre-existing medical conditions. Now, pre-existing, these are significant pre-existing conditions. They said nearly half of those patients had complex developmental disorders like cerebral palsy or lifelong technology-dependent treatments like having a trach or feeding tubes. Those are the children that they said who have trouble walking, talking, eating, breathing. Now, there's an important part about that too. They said those children, they're looking at research. Now they're looking at, look, this is the research. We're doing a cohort study of research and seeing what's going on there. They said, Dr. DeLuca, who's the chief of division of pediatrics and neonatal critical care at Paris-Scala University Hospitals, said it made sense that older children with these developmental disorders and other complex lifelong problems, like the ones I just mentioned, would be more vulnerable than infants or toddlers to a virus like COVID-19. Here's why, and here's what we can do as parents for our kids. They said, as these kids that are in the highly, highly concerned cohort, they said, or highly concerned group, they said, as they get older, they have a lower immunity, right? They've got a lower immunity because their body's been fighting off more things. The other thing is that they don't move much, and their weakening muscles affect their respiratory condition. Kids are meant to move. We are meant to move. We're meant to exercise. We've already talked about the fact that getting out and movement helps increase your immune system. He's saying that right here too, that these kids that aren't moving as much, that they're having more issues, that they're having more of a chance of having a problem, that they need to get out and be moving, that we all need to be getting out and moving more. And when we start to consider that, we start to look at like, all right, yes, that there's a chance of this happening, but this chance is really rare and really small. I mean, when you start looking at all these things, I mean, I've been going through all kinds of stuff and looking at it, and it's all saying the same thing. It's saying that the chances are rare. It's very small. That if your child does have something that signs or symptoms, that yeah, we should make sure that they get looked at, just like you would any other time. You're going to have your kids get looked at anyway. But at the same time, we need to be getting them out and getting them exercise. They need to be moving. They need to be going out and moving, because that's how it's going to help their immune function, just like we've talked about before, just like this doctor's saying here, that if they aren't moving as much, they're more susceptible to having a problem. So we need to move. We need to exercise. That goes for us as adults and our kids too. Make sure it's in a safe and healthy environment. Of course, being outside, making sure that you're taking advantage of the weather. We're getting nice weather that's coming through. Now we've got to make sure that we're doing the other things along the way, right? So sleeping well, eating well, moving well. Look, I'm going to say getting adjusted, because it helps have your immune system function at its best and have your body function at its best, because it gets your nervous system functioning like it should be. And as we've talked about before, it lowers stress. By getting adjusted, it boosts your body's ability to handle stress better. So that's a big part too. Like all of those things come in together, and we've got to make sure that we're addressing all of it. Now more than ever, we need to be concerned about those things for not just us as parents, for us as kids too, and make sure that we're taking all those necessary precautions and making sure that we're doing the things that are right for us, that make us feel comfortable too. So again, I'm Dr. Verdan. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the likes. I'm doing my best to make sure that I'm bringing this information to you. I will make sure I continue to do that. I'm getting more and more patients asking me about different things, and I'm going to make sure I share that with you too.